Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you also for this invitation. Thank you to Mrs. Bin, a very old friend. And thank you for the pleasure of being again in Vietnam. In this country which has a long history of struggle and which has been a model for many of us. My topic will be South-South solidarity, better than cooperation, for a sovereign project of a post-capitalist paradigm. Of course, like Samir has said, the BRICS meeting that we have known in Latin America just a few weeks ago is surely a step forward toward a multipolar world. And of course, this is a very positive step. Now, I will try to start from this and reflect on what is the meaning of this event. So the first step in my expose will be, well, we are assisting to new efforts of creating a multipolar world, but without a new model of development and of modernity. The second point will be a critical approach of the history of modernity absorbed by the logic of capitalism. And finally, how to build a post-capitalist modernity, a new step for what Samir was saying, the long construction of socialism, or a new serialization. So my first point, the multipolar world with the same model of development and modernity. The concept of modernity, which has been developed in the last 400 or 500 years, is a concept of a linear progress. Linear progress expressed in economic terms in the growth of the GNP. On an inexhaustible planet, with the possibility of extraction of natural resources, of extending monoculture without limits. So the concept of progress, of modernity, a concept of a linear progress on an inexhaustible planet, and with, as a means to get that, with a sacrificial economy. A few centuries ago, there were human sacrifices to the god or the goddess of fertility in order to get good crops. Today, millions of people are dying because of air and water pollution for the sake of a future progress. In this sense, the cosmovision is totally different, but finally, the means to get the aim is quite similar. And the conclusion is that what is happening so well in the capitalist countries as in the socialist countries are mechanisms to join, finally, the club of the unsustainable development from an ecological and from a social point of view, but in a different way. As we try to analyze what is happening, we see that the internal pattern of development of the BRICS, of the multipolar world, is not so different. There is no answer to the fundamental disequilibrium of metabolism between nature and human beings, according to the words of Karl Marx. Metabolism means the exchange of material between human beings and nature. And of course, this is causing a more and more fundamental disequilibrium, which means the destruction of nature. There is a preoccupation within the capitalist world about this natural destruction, because it began to be an obstacle to capital accumulation, and therefore it has to be taken seriously. In the socialist countries, we see that what is happening in this way of disequilibrium of the metabolism between nature and human beings is an obstacle to plant development, to a plant economy, and therefore there is also a preoccupation. But the fundamental vision of what is progress and what is modernity has not very much changed. The same thing is true for the social relation, where progress is the fundamental value, justifying sacrifice, sacrifices of human lives, sacrifices of human health, sacrifice of human welfare. Not only internally, we see the same pattern continuing with other means in both the socialist and the capitalist countries today, but also in the South-South relations, where we see the same reproduction of a search for a modernization, for a modernity. Of course, new dynamics, multipolar world, but same fundamental philosophy. We see, for example, that for the international relationships, commercial relationship, the increase of commercial relationship means more use of natural resources, which are beginning to empty themselves, of more energy, of emission of more noxious gases, of pollutions of the seas, of the airs. Lately, it was announced that Nicaragua will build, thanks to the help of China, a new canal between Atlantic Ocean and Pacific Ocean. What will that mean? That means more, of course, international exchange, but on an irrational base. Exchanges which are not necessary, with all the consequences for the destruction of nature, the use of natural resources, of energy, the pollution of seas and airs, etc. And that is not taken too much into consideration. Export of raw materials to BRICS countries from Latin America means more extractive activities in Latin America with new technologies which are not nature friendly. On the contrary. That means for Latin America or for Africa, reprivatization of the economy, relative deindustrialization of their economies. Land grabbing in Africa means also a real danger for food sovereignty. In Latin America, the indigenous people who are losing their land, who are expelled from their traditional lands, do not care if this is done by American multinational companies or by local new capitalist forces or by local or by BRIC countries, being Brazil, India, or China. What they see is the result on their own destruction. So, in this sense, we can say that the internal model of progress and of modernity, and also the model of thought relation as happening today, is not so different in the fundamental philosophy as before. Now, this may appear as a very strong language, and perhaps too pessimistic. I don't want to have an apocalyptic discourse that is completely useless. It is not also a negation of the achievements which have happened during the last century, a century and a half, with the social struggle, with the struggle for socialist solution. It is not to discourage the efforts made to build a multipolar world, but it is just to call the attention to the fundamental crisis of the model of development, which is not conducing to really the construction of a new civilization. It is not also ecological fundamentalism. It is not utopian socialism, but it is trying to have a realistic vision of what we are really achieving. Of course, we know that every relation with nature, every use of nature has an ecological imprint. But the problem is how to keep the metabolic equilibrium between nature and human activities so that the regeneration of nature would be possible. Of course, we know that taking that new collective intervention of human beings in the world to construct another type of economy means to take risk, and risk also for the life and the health of the population. But this should be democratically decided and not just as a result of some decisions from upside. So the question is how to construct the future, how to promote what Mrs. Bin was saying, a just world order for nature and for human beings. And what we can fear is that we are giving some superficial solutions. We speak today, and also in the United Nations, about green economy, green capitalism, because the situation is affecting the change of the ecosystems, is affecting also the capitalist accumulation. And that's why capitalism is painting itself in green. But there is not only the green capitalism, there is also the pink capitalism, what is called social capitalism or social market economy. Of course, the danger is that we are assisting to a kind of exercise of ideological painting capitalism in green, painting capitalism in social, but not giving fundamental answers. We have to know, if we are faithful to a Marxist tradition, that market is not an abstraction, it is a social relation. And the globalization of the law of value is something which is concretely existing. I give just one example of the country where I'm living for the moment, in Ecuador. There is the new idea, a new productive matrix. And this new idea is based on the fact that the country should export more to have means to have social policies, and also to transform the production in order to import less than what they can export. And that is called the new productive matrix. And one of the concrete examples which is given by the authorities is the export of broccolis. And I have made a study on the production of broccolis. And true enough, 97% of the broccolis of Ecuador are exported to the US, to Europe, to Japan, to Israel. Generally countries which can produce broccolis. But of course it is much less expensive because there is more workers' exploitation. And what are the conditions? The conditions are really monoculture, extremely great use of chemicals, destroying the soils, contaminating the water, exploiting the manpower, making contracts day per day for the workers and not respecting even the law of the country, having the capital of the two main enterprises have their capital in fiscal havens in Panama and in the Netherlands Antilles, and the prohibition of trade unions within the enterprise. And that is a model of what is the new productive matrix of a so-called progressive country. So I wanted to give as a title to my research, how to build the socialism of the 21st century with the capitalism of the 19th century. So that is a reality, and we have to be very aware of that. So we can say that there are no more partial solutions. Neo-Keynesianism, regulation, is not a bad thing in itself, but it's not a solution. Fiscal engineering, like proposed by Thomas Piketty, to correct social differences without class struggle, is not a final solution. Social market economy is not a solution. All those things may help to create and to organize transitions period, but not as an adaptation of the system to new ecological or social demands, but only at the condition that it would be steps toward an alternative, not only a regulation, but an alternative. How to reconstruct a modernity, a post-capitalist modernity, not a post-modernism like we know today in the different currents of philosophy, which are the best ideology for neoliberalism, but really a modernity which is a post-capitalist modernity. And that's why we come to the overlast point. How to build a post-capitalist modernity? What does that mean? Because I am not pessimistic. I think that we have in our hands the possibility of constructing what was asked by Mrs. Min, a new social just order. Capitalism is a parenthesis in human history. It exists in a short time. And it is a parenthesis because otherwise we are going to a real fundamental destruction of the planet and of human beings. So we have to find an alternative. We are forced to find an alternative. We are forced to struggle for a new paradigm. Paradigm means a fundamental orientation of the collective life of human beings on the planet. So which alternative, which paradigm, which instruments of transition to be concrete and practical, and not only to have utopian visions, and with which actors, because it will be a struggle. Capitalism will not disappear by itself. So this idea of trying to redefine a new paradigm is not just a return to the past. We have not to adopt again the cosmovisions of the past, but well, we have to rediscover the holistic vision of reality which has been of the past and which has been destroyed. Holistic meaning a vision of the totality, facing a modernity which has segmentized reality and which has given the opportunity to the law of value to impose itself to all the sectors of human living, of social and collective living. And so to rediscover, but on a modern way, the holistic vision of reality, to integrate the externalities in the vision of reality, especially the economic vision. Externalities are the things which are not paid by capital, which are the damages, ecological and social damages. They are external to the law of the market. So how to reintroduce this in the vision, in the holistic vision of reality. And so this is not a utopian dream. It can be adapted, it can be realized in very concrete actions and policies. And I just give the example of the four main pillars of what is the existing, collective existence of humankind in the planet. First one is the relation with nature. Every society has to build and always rebuild its relation with nature. So, for what was of course, the philosophy of capitalism was to see nature as natural resources, to be exploited to be transformed as in commodities, in merchandise. The only way to make nature contribute to the accumulation of capital. Capital seen as the only motor of economy. So to change this perspective of exploitation of a commodity to the respect of nature as the basis of life, as the basis of every life, physical, cultural, spiritual. And if we accept this principle, there are many concrete applications. For example, the public character of natural wealth. We cannot accept the privatization of natural wealth, neither private individual, neither corporated. We cannot accept anymore the commodification of natural elements essential to life, like water, like seeds. We cannot anymore accept the international trade based only on comparative advantages, but in meaning, in fact, the super exploitation of labor and the no application of any respect of ecological situation. And so with the irrational use of raw material, of energy, and of pollution. And so I have no time to enter in details, but we can define concrete policies at all levels, from the local, daily level of the existence of the people to the international level of international organizations. The second aspect, fundamental, is the production of the material base of life. Every society has to create the material base of life, physical, cultural, spiritual. And how the principle should be, how to restore the priority of use value on exchange value. Exchange value is the only value for capitalism, for capital. So how to give the priority no more to exchange value, but to use value, with all the consequences on the property of the means of production, on the end of predominance of financial capital, with all kinds of very practical consequences, like the abolition of fiscal heaven, where more than 1/3 of the world wealth is located, with the abolition of the bank secrecy, etc., etc. I have no time to enter in detail. But it is very practical. If we accept that principle, it is extremely concrete and very practical in terms of policies at all levels, from the local level to the international level. The third one, which is also a necessity for every society, small or big, historically or today, it is the collective organization. How to organize society socially and politically. And there, the orientation for the creation of the new society, of a new civilization, of a new paradigm, is the globalization of a generalization of democratic processes. Democratic processes not only in the political field, but also in the economic field, in the field of all social institutions, being cultural, being sport institution, being religious, etc., as a fundamental rule for the participation of the popular people, democratic processes, and also in social relations, like between men and women. So again, we can have very practical proposal for how to democratize, how to bring democratic processes to all sectors of collective life in order to promote a real participation. And that is very practical from the local point of view till the reform of the United Nations, where we know that the Security Council is everything except democratic. So that raised the problem of the state, of organizing the state. What is the concept of state? We still have too much, I see that in Latin America with the progressive countries, a Jacobin conception of the state that means centralized and authoritarian, but not enough with the organization of the participation of the popular initiative in public life. So again, at all levels, from the commune till the nation, till the international order, there are practical consequences that we can apply. And finally, interculturality. That means that what is the concept of modernity today, the concept of development? It is associated with the concept of Western civilization, Western culture, and all the other cultures are marginalized or excluded. And it is only with the riches of all the culture in the world, of all the knowledge, of all the philosophical approach, of all spiritualities, that we can build together a new paradigm, a new conception of collective life of humanity on the earth. And it is only with the this type of interculturality, and of course here in Asia we have such great philosophical and thinking traditions which has been excluded by the new concept of modernity, and which could be fundamental to reconstruct a holistic approach to reality and to reconstruct a real multicultural world. Not only from the point of view of the reading of reality and of trying to promote what could be the future, but also to construct together the ethics necessary to build the new paradigm. And also, and finally, we can say that those 4 points are the practical content of what could be, what should be, a post-capitalist paradigm. And I call that the common good of humanity. But any name can be given. The question is the content. How can we build that? So, this is not an illusion. It is not just a utopia. It is not an illusion because all over the world, thousands and thousands of initiatives are existing. They are dispersed, but in the field of relation with nature, in the field of new ways of producing the material base of life, in the field of collective organization, in the field of interculturality, we have many initiatives, thousands of initiatives in the world. They are still dispersed, they are still confused, they are not yet really constituting a necessary force to transform the system, but they exist. And the actors exist also, especially the 3 main actors in a dialectical process: the social forces, popular movements for a new, really for a struggle, for a social struggle. Intellectuals, not as illuminating intelligentsia, but for the reflection, for the systematization, and the political actors to define the transitions. So the actors are also existing. And we can conclude that for a South-South solidarity, there are many places of concrete action. We can see, for example, in this line of construction of new paradigm, the South-South solidarity to construct a post-capitalist paradigm and to create the forms of transition. For example, as a first step, the protection, common protection against monopoly capital in the field of exploitation, of commerce, international commerce, of finance, etc. We can give an example also, the capacity of escaping to the hegemony of the US dollar. And that is perhaps something which can be achieved by the BRICS. We can speak about also the development of productive forces, but respecting the possibility of regenerating of the planet, the problem of climate, how to study and propose solutions together. We can also think to the development of science and technology at the service of the use value and not of the exchange value. Finally, we can also think about the promotion of peasant agriculture, which is destroyed all over the world for the moment. So all those are really very concrete steps which can be achieved. And this means that a multipolar world would have a meaning only if we can go and prepare prepare really a new post-capitalist modernity. And so, in this sense, The South perhaps is better placed to find that way and to show the way for the world, because they are victims, and because the victims have better eyes to see the future than the ones who are the winners. And secondly, because they are still closer with their general culture and general civilization to a holistic vision of the world. And so I think that it is possible to think to common efforts to close in the history the parenthesis of capitalism. Thank you.